Hi, this is Tammy Leisher, host of Embracing Change, Talking Through Trauma. The podcast is focused on fitness enthusiasts and movement educators, where we'll have deep conversations that are impacting the movement industry. For example, trauma, health, vitality, the nervous system, and movement. And now, welcome to the podcast. Good day. Welcome to Embracing Change, Talking Through Trauma. And today my guest is Laurie Hammer. And Laurie is a functional nutrition therapist. And Laurie also hosts a podcast that is entitled, what again, Laurie, please?
Take Back My Brain.
Yes. So, and your podcast is only a year old from what I've seen, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me a little bit about your business and your podcast? So let's start first with you told me a story about how you had an eating disorder of your own, and that kind of led you down this big long path of where you are today.
Yes. So I had a 12-year-long battle with an eating disorder, and then I went to an outpatient program in Mill Valley, California, where their philosophy was you're addicted to what you're allergic to, and if you rebalance the brain, then you're able to overcome addictions, because an eating disorder is an addiction. And so that's exactly what happened. I found out that I had celiac disease, some other food sensitivities, adrenal issues, thyroid issues, whole host of things. But most importantly, when we balanced my brain with targeted and therapeutic doses of specific amino acids, it's like my brain turned on. And I could actually process things. I could process trauma. I could process thoughts and things that happened in the past where I wasn't able to before. And that's why I was using my eating disorder as a coping mechanism. And so that was my first dive, into the world of nutrition and alternative, medicine, as you called it, because I was in nursing school. So, I was very much on the allopathic track. And then my nursing professor introduced me to this, and it's a game changer. And that was 27 years ago, and here I am. And so there's lots of things in my life. I had a really rare cancer diagnosis. My children have had some challenges along the way. And so each of those things has made my paradigm go deeper and stronger and harder in this functional nutrition world.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I would say it's under control now, but for me, it was calorie restriction for a long, long time. And then also, it's interesting that you talk about, because I too had cancer. I had breast cancer 18 years ago, and I thought I was healthy. Really an interesting, I would just say, deep dive into my whole body as well.
Yes.
So, but
when I had the cancer diagnosis, I was the healthiest person I knew. I never, ever expected a cancer diagnosis.
So. Me neither.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And then, so it's kind of interesting when you talk about, because it started off as your personal journey, but then it's led you to your professional journey and your profession now. So you've been doing this for how many years?
Officially, professionally, for the last 12.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's a long time.
I love it. It's so beautiful to watch people's lives just change like right before your eyes.
Yeah. Now you, in your business, I know we said earlier, you said that you see clients anywhere from 6 months to a year. And do you see them privately, or do you see them in a combination of like coaching program, like a coaching program, and privately as well?
Yes, so I do have coaching programs. There's some group programs. I do private. It's really, each person is individual, so I want to make sure they get the best care that they can. So we chat about it after their initial appointment with me, like what's the direction they want to go, and we'll go from there.
Okay. And then as far as your podcast, because I was drawn to your podcast just because of the community that you've created in regards to on Instagram, and it's called the Calm Mom Community. Did I get that correct?
Yes, Calm Mom Community.
Yeah. And so are you do you work with mostly women who
Mostly
have,
women. I have a few smattering of men, but mostly, as you know as well, women are the ones that are seeking more help.
yes, yeah. And I think it's really, but do you see like there's one, like, do you see one area of nutritional deficiencies in, I mean, like, do you see one more than you see another?
Um, well, I would say most everybody that comes to me has some food sensitivities that they're not aware of. And so that in and of
Okay.
itself creates a whole host of nutrient deficiencies. And so that's one of the first things that we assess, or we remove, specific foods so that we can decide if there is a sensitivity to them or not. And there's always
Okay.
adrenal
And you,
fatigue and generally thyroid.
yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, that's a great. So can you explain what you do in regards to creating a healthy brain and all of the things that we talked about um, on our just the last little bit of a conversation there? What about what you do with the brain and try to get it to a full functioning or optimal functioning, I guess I
Yeah.
should say.
So what I do, my specialization is brain first therapy. So I honestly believe if we balance the brain, then everything below the neck gets a lot easier to deal with, right? Because when our mind is functional and we can process things, it's easier to change the food. It's easier to start exercising. It's easier to work through traumas and those types of things if your brain is actually balanced. So I focus on 5 different areas for the brain specifically because we have different areas that give us different emotions, thought processes, and those things. So I really concentrate on serotonin. So serotonin is our happy sunshine. Like when our serotonin is good, we just feel good. Life is happy, you start laughing again. Also concentrate on endorphins. Endorphins are that yummy, I kind of give yourself a hug. You just feel that inner joy area of your brain. And then there's the catecholamines, which is where you're like, oh, I actually care about life. I can focus and I can get things done. And then there's GABA, where you can actually take a deep breath and just let it out, kind of just let that water roll off your back like a duck. And you can really navigate stress a lot better because we all have stress, right? It's just how well can we navigate it? And are we responding appropriately to that event? Are we overreacting or underreacting or whatever it might be? And then the fifth thing is, we balance the glucose in the brain, because if your glucose is up and down and all wonky, your brain is going to be up and down and all wonky, and you're going to get depleted faster in all of those areas, and you're going to feel like you're losing your mind, especially as we transition into, perimenopause, menopause. There's always things that are happening anyway. And so I have women come to me and say, I just feel like I have lost my mind and none of these areas in my brain function well. And so when we balance those, we get that grounding feeling, then we can work on, all these other things, the root cause issues, as I like to call them, so that we can get optimal health.
So do you see very many perimenopausal women?
I see them all the time. Yes.
Okay. Because I feel like that would be something that our listeners, because, I'm coming from the fitness background, but so many women, it seems like right now, in regards to perimenopause and how it impacts just everything in our body, from weight gain to um, even like the lack of the ability to like feel comfortable in their bodies or their performance from a fitness level. I mean, it
Yes.
impacts a lot of things. Yeah. And I think that it's really, I see it from my clients that I work with that are either perimenopause or they are now in menopause, and how, they've talked about the brain fog and all those other things. And so obviously you've got tools that you use to help with those kinds of things.
I
So
do. I have lots of tools, and I am in perimenopause right now. So I understand, all you women out there, I understand how you feel. So I'm navigating that with you. And I feel like I'm navigating it well because I do have the right tools for
yeah.
women during this season so that we can balance that brain and, all those other
Now,
things.
I just have a question, Lori, and I don't know if have you dealt with women who've gone through breast cancer who are like they deplete their hormones? Because
Yes.
I had to take medication, and so I went boom straight into menopause. Had no idea that there was things out there and available at the time when I had breast cancer. And even though it was 18 years ago, but I know there's been a lot of changes. Do you see a lot of women who've gone through breast cancer
I do.
Okay.
I do. Over the years, I've seen quite a few.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
What a wonderful, I mean, that to me is just a wonderful service um, that you can provide. And I've done like on the recovery end of it, like helping women like recover like their full range of motion and things like that. I mean, not only am I a breast cancer survivor, but I have done pink ribbon Pilates, and then I've done a couple other specific Pilates programs for women who've gone through breast cancer. So
Right. And that in and of itself is such a trauma event, right? I mean, your whole
yeah,
body, depending on, if you have your breast removed or whatever it might be, just having a lump removed is it's traumatic, right? So in the mind dealing with, am I going to live or am I going to die? Understanding that cancer diagnosis.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that there's lots
I
of nuance
actually,
there.
yeah, and it was really interesting because I I went to an event last Friday, and there were multiple women that came up to me that were either had gone through the process of breast cancer, or they're now in the recovery stages of it. And I was really surprised because it's just I think it's more, I think breast cancer, when I had it a long time, when I had it 18 years ago, it was 1 in 8 women were going to have breast cancer or were going to be diagnosed. And that
Right.
number hasn't changed. So, but the fact that you can help them, oh my
Yes.
gosh, you're a new resource for me
That's
because
good
I
because
feel that.
I love that. I love helping women who've gone through that type of
Well,
trauma.
and I just feel like that it's like when I feel like sometimes when you're drawn together with people like us and
Yes.
you're talking about those kinds of things, I can help them with the exercise portion of it, but nutrition is not my area of expertise. And I always say that. And but having people to refer to that I actually had a conversation with to me is really, really important. So,
Absolutely.
and then also, do you encourage them to exercise?
Yes, 100%. You have to move in order to get well.
Okay. And to me, movement, stepped in service last Friday, and I talked about self-care, and part of it was like staying hydrated and what you're putting in your body and moving. And I think that so many times people are not moving.
Yeah.
The area where they live, I happen to live in Michigan, and I can tell you that there is like the winter months, people don't get outside and move. And
No,
it's just different with every community where you live. So, and are you in California?
no,
Um,
I'm in Iowa.
oh, you are.
I'm a
Okay.
Midwesterner, just like you, Tammy.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, and I know you guys get snow. I know you do, but
Yes.
I think, yeah, yeah. So, but again, it's people like just to move their bodies, and it's like it could be walking, it could be late weightlifting, it could be yoga, it could be Pilates. I mean, just whatever. And this is what I always say to people because indirectly what you're talking about from the brain standpoint, I'm also certified in doing nervous system integration work as well.
Nice.
And when you move your body to help process both the toxins out of your body, but also the traumas or the emotional wounds that go along with that. It's so important. And it's movement that makes our bodies feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily prescribing to something else. So, but yeah,
Oh,
it's really, it's a rabbit hole that sometimes I have to stay away from when I start talking about it because I just, like you, I firmly believe it's a holistic, whole body approach to what we're doing.
yeah.
So,
And in my world, in the nutrition world, when we're balancing the brain, movement is so key to raising endorphins and dopamine and GABA and those types of things. And I find that my clients who are willing to, get moving and moving consistently, they recover a lot faster from anxiety and
yes,
depression and all those other things.
yeah. And I think it's really interesting that you're bringing up anxiety and depression, and because there's been such an an increase since COVID with mental health, but depression and anxiety specifically. And I think that's really important that you're addressing it from your end like you are, and helping women specifically. I shouldn't, I mean, I know you have men, but more probably more prone to women with the
Yes.
anxiety and depression. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID was not kind to us.
No, it wasn't. And I also think that, like, just even the amount of screen time that people had and how many
Mm,
other issues that they have with, people have issues with their shoulders and their necks and even their gut health and things like that is just so, um, and you can trace it back to COVID. And I'm sure you see a lot of things with what like, because I can tell you that I see it too as well. So,
yeah,
but yeah.
absolutely. And there was a new study that came out, Tammy, and I just saw it today, and I haven't read the full thing yet. It was either in Sweden or Norway. I feel like it was Norway. They did an experiment with their middle school kids, and they took their phones away. And anxiety and depression went down, learning went up, bullying went down, like all of these, factors got, positive or negative, right? So there was a huge difference in just their mental health in middle school. And, we need to carry that over into our adulthood too, and put those phones away and shut things off and start reading again and moving and playing games and, doing all those things that don't require technology.
Well, and I think that too, and I work with a lot of clients who, what I'm going to just say, are actively aging. How's that?
Here you go.
And using and like thinking about like balance is so crucial. And I do a lot of like balancing things with my clients that are really like, but it stimulates anytime you cross the midline with our like with movement, anytime you cross the midline, you're increasing brain health as well.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, and you're using so many different factors in your brain when you are moving and crossing that midline. And so I try to incorporate as much of crossing the midline as I can when I'm working with clients, be either virtually or in person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of studies around like when children, because I have a master's degree in early childhood as well. And so anytime you would have them cross the midline as a child, it increases their brain health as well. But as we age, going back to those same basic principles with crossing the midline and doing balancing things and reaching down and touching and doing all kinds of stuff that um, again, it goes back to brain health because you got to stimulate your brain to keep it healthy and keep it moving.
Yeah,
Mm.
we're top-down people. If our brain doesn't work, not much of anything else will.
Yes, 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 yeah. And it's really been, I think that from a like when you look at stories, because I like studies as well, and there's one specifically that I really have looked at extensively, and it's women, specifically women, but women who have fibromyalgia. And
Mm,
when it comes, because it's an autoimmune disorder and it's obviously affects their so much
right.
of their body and how they end up hurting, their diet is a big piece of it as well.
Yeah,
So it was,
absolutely.
but the interesting thing was what the study was is it looked at depression and how pain, like if they could get their pain under control, obviously it helped with their depression because it was a big cyclical
Hmm.
study and it showed, and it was really very interesting from a pain management standpoint and getting people to move and don't be defined by their pain, but or by their diagnosis and moving beyond that. So
Yeah. And I work with a lot of people who have fibromyalgia. And when we balance the brain, we get them moving and we change a few, food things, it's amazing what happens. All of a sudden this diagnosis where they really can't pin it on anything in particular. So they give you the fibromyalgia diagnosis and they're like, well, I'm just gonna have to live with it. And that's not true. That's not true at all.
yeah,
Like we don't have to live with any of this stuff. Our bodies were created to heal if we remove the interference and we give the body what it needs. We fix those deficiencies and we start moving and we, change our mindset because life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? So,
yeah,
so many things that we can do. And I never, ever, ever want a woman to say, well, I'm stuck with my thyroid. I'm stuck with fibro. I'm stuck with MS. I'm stuck with
Yeah,
whatever it
and
might be.
I think it's really interesting because, when you think about people who are given that diagnosis, they're given medication
Yeah.
versus looking at like their diet, for example, and all those kinds of things as well. So, but anyways, Lori, I know you have a client in a couple of minutes, so can you stay on with me just for a minute after we
Yes, I
finish
can.
this? So thank you for joining me today, Lori. And how can people find you?
Yeah, you can follow my podcast, Take Back My Brain. I am on iTunes, Spotify, on YouTube. You can go to my website, lauriehammer.com. And I offer a free consult there if you want to chat with me about what's going
So
on with you.
is your website lauriehammer.com?
Yes, lauriehammer.com.
Okay, so this has been a delightful conversation, Lori. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
me
Tammy.
today. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. It's my lifelong mission to educate and bring awareness to the fitness industry around trauma-informed movement. If you have any questions or subject that you would like to hear addressed, reach out to me at my website at www.studiotpilates.com. Hit that subscribe button so the next time we release our latest episode, you're going to be notified. You can also reach out to me on Facebook at Tammy Leisure. On Instagram, you can also reach out to me at Tammy Leisure, but also Studio T Pilates MI. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and we'll talk to you next time.